Viewing the painting through a stereo microscope helps reveal aspects of the painting's construction and condition. Morlete first applied a base layer of a coarse red ground onto the canvas, and then he carried out the painting with oil paints. These paints become more transparent and abraded. This resulted in the red ground below becoming more visible, as seen in this microscope image. The transparent natural resin varnish on the painting's surface has oxidized and yellowed over time. In high magnification, it was determined that the present varnish is not original. The first step in the conservation treatment will be to remove this layer. The conservator tests various solvents and chooses one that safely dissolves the varnish without harming the paint structure. The initial examination showed that the varnish removal in the past had partially dissolved the red ground, causing it to swell through the cracks, as can be seen through the microscope. In this painting, the red ground beneath the paints is especially sensitive to commonly used solvents. The conservator is engineering a cleaning method that will be safe to apply to the painting. She has decided to use a solvent gel. The gel absorbs the varnish, which prevents any solvent and dissolved yellow varnish from traveling back into the paint structure. Tissues are saturated with the solvent gel and applied to the painting surface and left for a tested period of time. Once the varnish is dissolved, the tissues are peeled back. Any remaining gel residue on the surface is removed with a cotton swab. This process is repeated over the entire painting. Old retouches that are beneath the varnish layer are removed along with the cleaning process. The old yellowed varnish layer obscured the contrast and tonality of the original colors. To study all 6 of Morlete's paintings in detail, technical analyses are carried out. The museum scientist helps to identify some of the paint material in the blue faded areas. In order to identify the blue colorant, a handheld UV visible spectrophotometer was used amongst other non-destructive methods. Certain colorants have characteristic features in the UV visible region. It was determined that the artist used indigo for the blues. Indigo is a natural plant dye that is originally extracted from the leaves of the indigofera plant and was cultivated in Mexico at the time.
There were a lot of pigments that were being exported from Europe to the Americas. Painters had, for example, requests of bringing lapis lazuli, for example. That was one of the colors that they were requesting a lot.
More expensive.
So perhaps he used just something local, and it was indigo, even though perhaps he would have liked to have used ultramarine, but since there were so many paintings, they really were on a budget.
Another part of conservation is to preserve the artwork and prevent further risks. In this case, the wood strainer is a later addition. It is very weak and flimsy. The strainer will have to be replaced, but first the painting needs to be detached in order to re-stretch it. The original edges are not able to support the painting sufficiently because they are deteriorated and the fabric is stiff and brittle. Canvas strips are prepared from a new stretched-out canvas. The strips will reinforce the edges of the painting for the restretching. They will be frayed in order to prevent impressions that could be seen from the front. The canvas strips will be adhered from the back of the painting to all 4 sides. With this canvas addition, the painting is ready to be mounted on the new stretcher. The next step in the treatment is to fill and tone the losses. Gesso is applied to the paint losses to create a level surface. The traditional gesso recipe that is used consists of rabbit skin glue and chalk as filler. Each step requires concentration, patience, and a steady hand. One of the ethical guidelines of conservation is to use minimal intervention. Because of this, the conservator works very precisely to make sure that the filler doesn't overlap the original paint. The conservator first tones the fills with water-based paints. Thin brush strokes get applied on top of each other, only on the dried gesso. A new varnish layer is applied to the surface with the spray gun. This will provide protection for the paint and creates optical effects such as saturation of the colors. The conservators watch carefully so the application is even over the surface.
This is sort of the more fun part, actually, because the painting starts knitting itself together, and it actually can go, one can get very focused on it, and it starts going very quickly.
The final step of the treatment is to paint with synthetic resin-based paints to match gloss and tonality. All materials have to be reversible with good aging properties to reduce possible problems with future treatments. All steps get well documented. These images show the stages of treatment for the loss in the center area,